The woman in 20F never spoke until the building started changing. Reddit horror story. They say every apartment building has its secrets, little ticking bombs wrapped in wallpaper and water stains, waiting to explode when no one's looking. Ours wasn't any different. A dull, beige structure standing like a forgotten tooth in the city's jawline, barely swaying under the weight of decades of boredom and muffled arguments. Apartment 20F was the unit that never made noise. In a building where someone was always drilling or stomping or shouting through the walls about who took what from whom, 20F was unsettlingly quiet. Not just peaceful, unnervingly silent, like a scene in a movie just before someone gets stabbed. No TV, no music, no plumbing sounds. You'd walk by and hear nothing but the echo of your own steps. That kind of silence doesn't happen by accident. The woman who lived there, Helena, didn't look like someone you'd remember, which was what made her so memorable. She had one of those faces that you'd forget mid-conversation and then recognize weeks later in a crowd with a jolt of unease. Medium everything. Hair, weight, even the shade of her lipstick seemed custom designed to disappear. She had a way of slipping past you in the stairwell without making a sound, keys in hand, eyes lowered, but never hurried. No one ever heard her scream. Not during thunderstorms or fire alarms, or even that time when the upstairs pipe burst and drenched the second-floor corridor. Not a single yelp. She would just watch, lips parted slightly, as if her voice were stuck somewhere halfway up her throat. I started noticing her more after my roommate moved out. Suddenly I was alone, and every creak or draft felt amplified. I'd hear shuffles in the hallway, then catch her shadow slipping past the peephole, always at odd hours. 4 a.m. 2F's door would open with a click, then shut again so gently it barely registered. I began keeping track of the times, marking them in a notebook I used for grocery lists. At first it was just curiosity. Then it became routine. A game. Then it wasn't a game anymore. It was the package that changed everything. A plain brown box left on the floor outside her door, no return address, no tape, sealed only by a single strip of old twine. I noticed it while coming back from the laundromat, arms full of damp clothes, and something about it made me stop. The box didn't belong there. It hadn't been there that morning, and Helena never got packages. People in 20F never did anything. But there it sat like a wound. 3 days passed and the box remained. Untouched, I passed it multiple times a day, and each time it looked more sinister. The twine had started to fray on one corner, and the cardboard was turning dark at the base, like something inside had leaked or was slowly rotting. No one seemed to care. No one even asked. Apartment 20F was a blind spot on our floor, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop seeing it. So I did something I'm not proud of. I knocked. Once, twice. Then pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Not even a rustle. I tried the knob. Locked. I waited another day, then another. On the 5th day, the box was gone. I told myself I must have missed it being taken in. Maybe she finally opened it at night. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt a pulse of dread, like something had shifted. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of scratching. Not the usual wall gnawing of pipes or rats. This was deliberate, rhythmic. It was coming from above my bed, from the ceiling that separated me from 20F. It continued for 12 minutes and stopped. Then silence again. The building began to change after that. Or maybe I just started to notice what had always been there. Mr. Donnelly in 2A stopped going on his balcony. Said something about weird shadows on the fire escape. Claudine from 30E, who never missed a rent payment in 15 years, vanished for a week and came back with her hair shaved and no explanation. People whispered more. Doors closed faster, mailboxes stayed full longer. And Helena, she started making noise, faint humming late at night, throatier than I expected, like someone humming with her mouth full. Then footsteps, but they didn't sound like heels or slippers. They were soft, wet, almost padded. I knew I should have stopped listening. I knew it was none of my business. But the more I tried to ignore it, the louder the building became, as if everything else was trying to drown her out. A pipe burst in 1B. The elevator groaned more. Light bulbs flickered in the hall outside her door. And yet, somehow, Helena's noises always reached me. It climaxed the night the alarm went off, not a fire alarm. My alarm. The little battery-powered one I kept in my kitchen drawer. I woke up to its shrill bleat and stumbled into the hallway to find nothing. No smoke, no movement. Just the flashing red LED and an open front door. Mine. I don't know how it opened. I always locked it double bolt. I didn't see anyone, but my apartment smelled different. Like copper. Like wet pennies. Like something that had blood without dying. I changed the locks the next day. Bought a camera. Set it up facing the hallway. For a while, things went back to normal. No sounds. No packages, no humming. I reviewed the footage each morning, and for 2 weeks there was nothing. Just the occasional blurry neighbor or maintenance guy. Then came the frame. Just one. Not a video, not a recording. A still image frozen at 3:33 a.m. It showed the hallway dimly lit and at the center of the frame. Helena, standing directly in front of the camera, not looking into it but past it, like she was staring through the lens and out the other side. Her face was wrong, not disfigured, just wrong, as if it had been painted in the wrong order. Her eyes weren't where they should be. Her mouth too low, and her skin looked translucent in the monochrome filter, and beneath it something darker pulsed. I deleted the footage. Not just the frame. All of it. Reset the camera, changed the password. But the next night, the same thing happened. Same time, same frame, same face. No movement. Just that image burned into my monitor. I stopped checking after the third repeat. Unplugged the camera, sold it online. I convinced myself I imagined it all. That it was a glitch, a loop, a bad dream pressed into technology. I almost succeeded in forgetting, until the lights in the hallway began turning off. One by one. Each day, a different bulb. Until only the one in front of 2F remained. That one flickered every time I passed it. I stopped walking by. Took the stairs from then on, but sometimes I still heard it. That hum. Like a throat full of stones trying to sing through a mouth that never learned how to open. And then one night, I was woken up by a knock. 3 soft raps. I froze, thinking it was a dream, but it happened again. The sound of skin on wood, slow and patient. I crept to the peephole, heart hammering like a trapped bird, and looked out. No one. Just the dim hallway and the flickering light. I waited, breath held, until something moved a shape. Not a person, not really, slid across the frame, dragging behind it something long and bent. I couldn't tell what it was, but I knew where it was going. 2F. Always back to 2F. The police didn't help. I tried. I called, stammered something about break-ins and weird neighbors. They came, knocked on her door, waited. No answer. When they turned to leave, I saw one of them glance back and shudder. That's when I knew they felt it too. That whatever lived in 20F wasn't just quiet, it was watching. And maybe it always had been. The day after the knock, I didn't leave my apartment. I called in sick to work, turned off my phone, pulled the blinds, and sat in the middle of the living room like a child waiting out a thunderstorm. But it wasn't the storm I feared. It was the silence that came after. That dreadful silence that pressed in like walls growing tighter by the hour. The air in the building had changed. It tasted like static, and every sound, pipes, footsteps, voices from the upper floors, sounded too sharp, too deliberate. I couldn't explain it, but I knew 20F had noticed me noticing, and that was enough to make even the ceiling fan seem hostile. By late afternoon, I realized I hadn't eaten. I opened the fridge, took out some leftovers, and immediately dropped the container. Mold. Green and black, thick as oil paint, had consumed everything. Not just the leftovers, but the milk, the eggs, even the butter, all rotted like they'd been sitting for weeks instead of days. My stomach turned. Something was off. The date on my phone confirmed it was the day after the knock, but the decay in my kitchen whispered otherwise. I threw everything out, but the smell lingered, clawing at the edges of my breath. That night, I dreamed I was underwater, trapped in a narrow corridor that stretched forever, and from the far end, something was crawling toward me, slow and wet and humming, always humming. When I woke, I found scratches on my bedroom wall. Not deep, but fresh, parallel lines running from the baseboard to the height of my knees. Like someone or something had dragged fingers or claws upward while I slept. I checked every door and window. Locked. I even considered whether I'd done it myself in some fugue state, but the spacing was too wide. Not human. Not unless I had grown extra joints in my sleep. I decided to go upstairs. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of feeling hunted. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that it was all in my head. That 2F was just an old apartment with bad wiring and a shy tenant, so I went. Noon, broad daylight, clutching a pocket knife I'd never used. I told myself I'd knock again. Just knock. Maybe she'd answer this time. Maybe she'd smile and explain it all. Loud pipes, bad plumbing, a raccoon in the walls. Anything. I reached the door. It looked the same as always. Unassuming. Beige. The peephole stared back like a cataract. Blind eye. I raised my hand, hesitated, then knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the wood. I heard, something. Not words, not movement. A sound like deep breathing but mechanical, like a slowed-down recording of a whale call mixed with the hum of a refrigerator. I stepped back, waited. Then I heard the bolt slide. Slowly. The door opened an inch. No one stood there. No face peeked out. Just darkness inside, total and thick. But I could feel it. Something was there just beyond the threshold, watching, waiting. I should have run, but I didn't. I whispered, "Helena," and the darkness responded with silence so dense it made my ears ache. Then something moved within it, not toward me, just shifted, like a curtain of breeze. Then the door began to close, not slam, not shut with force, just gently closed, with the soft finality of a decision being made. The bolt clicked back into place. I stood there for minutes, paralyzed, then turned and walked away. I told myself I wouldn't come back up. I told myself I'd find another place to live, break the lease, sleep in my car. Anything. But the apartment didn't let me leave. The next morning, I packed a bag, essentials only. I figured I'd crash with a friend across town for a few days. As soon as I opened the door, I realized something was wrong. The hallway was wrong. Too quiet. Not just the absence of noise, but an active stillness. The air was cold, and a fog hugged the floor like mist in a morgue. And the walls. God, the walls, they pulsed. Just faintly, but enough that the shadows didn't stay where they were supposed to. I took a step forward. The door slammed shut behind me. I turned to open it, but the handle was gone. Not broken. Gone. Like the door had grown over it. I ran to the stairs, but where there should have been 10 steps, there were now 3. Then a gap. Then darkness. I turned toward the elevator. Its light was on. The up arrow glowed red. It opened as I approached. Empty. Too empty. The kind of empty that makes your bones ring. I stepped in anyway. Pressed the ground floor. The doors closed. The elevator didn't move. Instead, the floor shifted beneath me. Not a lurch, not a drop. It breathed. Rose and fell like a ribcage. The lights inside flickered, not from power issues, but like something was passing between them. I looked up, and the ceiling bulged downward, as if something massive was pushing from above. I slammed the open button. Nothing. Then, without warning, the doors creaked apart. Only an inch. A sound leaked in. Wet, followed by that humming. Closer now. Clearer. A harmony of wrongness. The doors groaned open the rest of the way. I wasn't on the ground floor. I was on a hallway I didn't recognize. It looked like ours but stretched longer, the walls narrower, bending subtly toward each other at the top like a throat. The carpeting was darker. The air smelled thick with mildew and old pennies. All the apartment numbers were the same 20F. Over and over again. Dozens of doors all marked 20F. Some open just a crack. Others sealed completely, bulging like something had tried to claw its way out. I stepped forward. Every door I passed whispered my name. Not audibly. But the air shifted each time, forming the syllables of my breath. I picked one at random. Maybe the 3rd, maybe the 10th. It was open an inch. I pushed it gently. Inside was my apartment, exactly my apartment. Same couch, same cracked mug on the counter, same bag packed by the door. I walked in, heart hammering. Everything was where it should be. Except not. The photo on the shelf showed a stranger's face. The plants were dead, and the walls bled, faint trails of brown red leaking from corners and seams like the building itself was exhaling. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. No one, just the apartment door swinging shut. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps just like the night before, but from inside the bedroom this time. I didn't move. The knock came again. Then again, more urgent. I backed toward the front door, but it was sealed. No knob, no seams, just flat wall. I turned toward the bedroom. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, Helena stood facing the corner. Her back was wrong. Too long. Her arms hung limp, fingers brushing the floor like roots. Her hair floated upward, as if underwater. And her humming. It was the same, but now it carried a pattern, like a lullaby that had been reversed and slowed. She began to turn. I shut my eyes, screamed, and when I opened them, I was on the floor of the elevator, the doors open, my bag beside me. Back in my own hallway. The air was stale but normal. The elevator lights no longer flickered. Everything was as it had been. I ran to my apartment. This time, the handle was there. I locked the door, bolted it, and collapsed. I haven't left since. The hallway looks normal again. The other tenants pass by. They smile, they nod. They carry groceries and talk on phones and pretend the world is still ordinary. But I know better. I hear the humming now. Not just at night, but during the day. Faint, always under everything. The fridge. The pipes, even in my own breathing. And Helena, she hasn't left 20F, but neither have I. I stopped counting the days after the elevator incident. It's not that I lost track. It's that time inside the apartment no longer moved the same way. The clock hands still turned, sure, but they felt performative, like stage props trying to keep up an illusion. My phone refused to charge. My watch reset to 1200 every morning. I'd wake up at 2:47 a.m. regardless of when I went to bed, always gasping, always drenched in sweat, always feeling like someone had just whispered my name from under the floorboards. Food spoiled within hours. My plants shriveled even though I watered them. The windows no longer showed the street. Instead, just an expanse of gray static. Not fog, not dust. Static like what you'd find on an old TV screen, humming gently behind the glass, flickering with unreadable messages. I tried once, just once, to open the window and scream for help, but the moment the frame lifted, that sound came flooding in, that hum, so loud and raw I nearly vomited. It wasn't just a noise. It was a presence, an awareness that wrapped around my skull like a noose and whispered promises of knowing. I slammed it shut and taped it closed. I haven't touched it since. I began hearing footsteps in the walls. Not above or below, but within the walls. The kind of slow, dragging steps that made you picture bare feet slick with something wet. They always stopped just behind my bedroom headboard. Then came the tapping. Not from fingers, no. Too irregular, too soft. Like the twitch of insect legs. I banged on the wall once in frustration and instantly regretted it. Because the tapping stopped, and then tapped back, imitating my rhythm perfectly, like it had been learning from me. I tried to call someone. Family. Friends. Anyone. But every time I picked up the phone, the screen blinked once, flashed a white symbol I couldn't recognize, and powered down. Even the emergency line didn't work. Instead of a dial tone, I'd get that humming, but more mechanical, like it had been synthesized to sound almost human. I smashed the phone on the counter. The next morning, it was whole again, sitting on the charger, fully powered on. I didn't touch it after that. Whatever lived in 20F, it was expanding. It had spread beyond the walls of that apartment. Into mine. Into me. Because I'd changed too. I started forgetting things. Not trivial things. Essential ones. My parents' names. The taste of water. What my voice sounded like when I laughed. Sometimes I'd look into the bathroom mirror and not recognize my reflection. It would smile too long. Blink too slowly. One time I saw it move when I hadn't. Just once. But it was enough. I covered the mirror with a towel and avoided the bathroom after dark. Shadows there didn't behave anymore. I stopped sleeping. Not because of nightmares. Because of the dreams. They weren't frightening, exactly. They were familiar. Too familiar. I'd find myself back in 20F, but not scared. Calm. Content. As if I belonged there. I'd see Helena walking down an endless corridor lined with mirrors. She'd never look back, never turn, just hum that same godless tune while her reflection rippled across every mirrored wall, 1,000 versions of her floating in sync. And then I'd wake up with nosebleeds and mud on my feet. I started writing things down. Names. Memories. Anything I wanted to remember. I filled 3 notebooks, but they all disappeared after a week. Just gone. I searched the entire apartment. Nothing. Eventually, I found one of them. The last page had been torn out, and on it was a crude drawing, done in black ink or maybe something darker, of a door labeled 20F. Above it, a mouth had been drawn. Just a mouth, no eyes, no face. Just a mouth with teeth too sharp and too many. Then I remembered the camera, not the one I'd sold, the old one. An analog camcorder I'd inherited from my uncle years ago and shoved into the back of a closet. I dug it out, loaded fresh batteries, and pointed it at my door. Not for proof, for confirmation. I needed to know if I was losing my mind, or if something was truly watching me from the hall. I pressed record, placed it by the peephole, and waited. The next morning I played the tape. The first hour was normal. Nothing light. Silence. Then, at 2:47 a.m., something appeared. The footage dimmed slightly as if light itself bent inward. Then the hallway breathed. I don't know how else to describe it. It stretched outward, the way lungs expand. And from that distortion stepped a figure, not Helena. Something wearing Helena. Its arms moved like branches in wind, erratic and broken. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and beneath its feet, the carpet sizzled. It approached my door and paused, exactly where I usually stood to peer out. Then it smiled. Even though the camera recorded in low light, I could see the teeth. All of them. There were far too many. It stayed for 17 minutes. It never knocked. Just watched. Then it turned and walked back into the hall. Except, its body didn't turn. Only the feet reversed direction. The torso and face stayed facing the door, as if the body had malfunctioned and kept walking backward. I dropped the camera and wept. That same night, I found a note slid under my door. No envelope. Just yellow paper, folded in half, stained in one corner. Inside was a single sentence. You've been in 20F the whole time. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was a threat, a scare tactic, a cruel prank. But then I started looking closely at my surroundings. The cracks in my walls matched those I'd seen in Helena's apartment during my dream. The chip tile near my fridge, the same as the one I'd seen when I'd stepped into the wrong hallway that day. My apartment wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. Or maybe the building had rearranged itself around me. A maze of endless 2Fs, looping and folding, devouring whatever pieces of the real world had once existed here. Then came the voice. At first, it only whispered from behind the walls. One syllable, repeated endlessly: open. Over and over. At night, it would crawl into my ears and settle behind my eyes. Open. I stopped eating. I stopped moving. I just sat there, rocking, pressing my palms to my ears until I bruised myself. But the voice kept coming. Louder. More insistent. It no longer came from the walls. It came from within. I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. That's when I finally understood the humming. It wasn't just a sound. It was a call. A frequency designed to awaken something. Not outside, but in those who heard it. A key, and I had listened to it too long. It had tuned me like an instrument, made me resonate with whatever lived in 20F. I was no longer a bystander. I was a note in its song. I started writing on the walls. At first, words from my memory. Names of people, streets I once walked, smells I remembered. Then diagrams. Then symbols I didn't recognize. Spirals, triangles intersected by barbed lines. I'd wake up and find new ones etched into the drywall with fingernails or something sharper. I don't remember drawing them, but they glowed faintly at night. Not with light, with intention. I know how this sounds. I know this reads like madness, but madness doesn't keep time. Madness doesn't leak ink from light fixtures or whisper the names of your childhood pets while you brush your teeth. Madness doesn't rearrange your furniture when you blink. Madness doesn't cause your reflection to move independently, waving at you when your back is turned. But 20F does, and now, it's calling again. The knocking started again last night. Only now, it's coming from inside the closet. Rhythmic. Calm. 3 taps, then silence. Then again. I placed a chair against the door, but this morning the chair was gone. Not moved. Gone. I opened the closet. Nothing inside but dust. And footprints leading into the back wall. Bare, elongated, slightly scorched footprints. There's something I haven't told you. The camera. It's been recording non-stop for 4 days now. I can't bring myself to turn it off. The footage plays on a loop on my TV. And every day at 2:47 a.m. it captures something new. Not always Helena. Sometimes it's me standing outside my own door, watching, smiling, waiting, and sometimes it's the hallway itself that moves. Doors rearrange, the floor tiles spin like a Rubik's Cube. On the 5th day, the camera caught a frame, just one, where every door on the floor stood open at once. Darkness spilled from every threshold, and deep within it, shapes stirred. Not human, not pretending to be. Just limbs and teeth and the suggestion of screaming. I turned off the TV after that, but the screen keeps turning itself back on, always at 2:47 a.m. Tonight, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna open the door. Not the front one. The closet. I have to know what's inside. What's waiting? I don't expect to come back. Not really, but maybe I never left. Maybe that note was right. Maybe I've been in 20F the whole time, and everything else was just a mercy dream. A kindness. A soft room built from denial. But now the house wants me awake, and I'm listening. The door inside the closet didn't exist until the moment I touched the back wall. I pressed my palm against the plaster, feeling its cold grain beneath my fingertips, and it breathed back at me, one long exhale that pulled inward instead of out, like the wall was sucking me into its lung. The plaster thinned under my touch. Not crumbling, not cracking, just giving way. I didn't need to push. It moved for me, and there it was, a door where there hadn't been one. Seamless. Colorless. No handle. Just a single word carved at eye level in something too deep and too black to be paint. Open. The humming started again, no longer distant, no longer restrained. It filled my bones like marrow, like something crawling inside the hollowness of me and setting up camp. I felt it tuning me like fingers plucking a string to test if I was in key. I was. I always had been. I pressed my forehead to the door and whispered, "I'm ready." The door peeled back. Not open, not swung, peeled, like flesh unraveling. I stepped through. The hallway beyond wasn't like the ones in the building. It stretched outward and downward at the same time, bending space like heat over asphalt. The walls pulsed faintly, flesh, like veined with light that flickered as I passed. The air smelled of rust and something sweeter, like rotting fruit mixed with hot plastic. Every few steps, I passed another door, each one numbered 20F, each one slightly ajar. I didn't dare look inside. Not yet, not until I reached mine. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't pass in this place. The ticking part of my brain fell silent. My thoughts began to echo. My memories stopped feeling real. But eventually I reached the door that waited for me. It didn't look different from the others. Same scratched paint. Same warped frame. But I knew it was mine the way you know your name, your face, your first heartbreak. I pushed it open. Inside was light, but not warm light. It came from everywhere and nowhere, a pale, bloodless illumination that didn't cast shadows. The apartment looked just like mine. Same couch, same framed photograph on the wall. Only the photo had changed. It showed a version of me I didn't recognize. Older, eyes sunken, mouth curled in a grin that didn't belong to any human I'd ever seen. In the reflection of the glass, someone else stood behind me. Or maybe it was Helena. Or maybe it was what used to be Helena. The hum here was constant now, rising and falling like breath. I moved from room to room, each one looping back to the same starting point. No matter which doorway I crossed, I always ended up in the living room. I tried to leave. The door was gone. In its place was a window, and behind it darkness that shimmered like oil. That's when I saw the others. Figures behind the glass. Dozens of them. All versions of me. Some younger, some grotesque, some distorted as if viewed underwater. Each one stood frozen, pressed against the window, mouthing something I couldn't hear. Their eyes were wide. Not terrified. Hungry. And in the center she stood. Helena, or her shell, or her echo. Her arms now split at the elbows, trailing down into threads that coiled like vines, her mouth stretching slowly in that impossibly wide grin, teeth still multiplying. She didn't knock. She just tilted her head to one side, as if asking why it took me so long. The floor beneath me began to melt. Not burn, melt. As though it had been wax all along and someone lit the wick. I sank slowly, not screaming, not resisting. I understood now. The apartment wasn't haunted. It wasn't cursed. It was alive, and I had been its guest. No. Its cell, its organ, its voice. My body sank deeper into the floor, through layers of heat and humming and memory. I passed through another apartment, then another, all 20F, all different. In one, a child stood in the corner chewing on a photo. In another, a woman hung upside down from the ceiling, smiling even as blood pooled above her brow. In another, I saw myself rocking gently in a chair that didn't exist in my real home, humming softly with a face split down the center but still breathing. Each level blurred into the next, more chaotic than the last. The humming became words now, layered over themselves like echoes in a canyon. I couldn't parse them, not individually, but together they told me a truth too massive for language. I belonged here. I had always belonged here. I hit the bottom, or maybe the center. A chamber, no floor, no ceiling, just a sphere of pulsing darkness stitched together with filaments of memory and sound. In the middle floated a shape, not a person, not quite, a composite. Limbs that shifted, mouths that whispered, fingers that wrote invisible stories into the air. It was made of all the tenants who had ever lived in 20F, and those who hadn't yet, and those who never would. It looked at me without eyes. And I understood. 2F wasn't a room. It was a place between places, a fold in space, a sentient scar on the skin of reality that fed on attention, memory, resonance. A song only certain minds could hear. And once you heard it, once you listened, you became part of its music. I was part of it now. But I didn't scream. I hummed. I hummed with all of them. When I woke, I was in my apartment again. At least it looked like my apartment. Clean. Normal. The window now showed the city. The clock worked. My phone had full battery. No one would have guessed what I'd seen, except for the changes. The humming now followed me everywhere. Not just in the building, in the grocery store, on the bus, in strangers' mouths when they yawned. The frequency lived inside me. It had nested, and people noticed. They looked at me too long. Their smiles lasted a beat too long. Kids cried when I passed. Dogs' whimper, electronics flickered. Then the letters started. Slipped under my door, under my pillow, in my shoes. All handwritten. All in the same tight, slanted scrawl. You brought it back. You wants more. Find another. I ignored them. At first. Then I saw Helena again. Not in the building. On the street. She stood across from my bus stop. Wearing the same coat. Same neutral expression. But her eyes now glowed faintly under the streetlight, like glass holding candlelight. She didn't blink. She just watched, and I felt it. A pull, her. Toward the building, toward the song. I ran. For days, I didn't leave my apartment. I taped over every mirror, covered every vent, disconnected the smoke detectors. They hummed now, too. But it wasn't enough. I still heard the knock. 3 taps. Always from somewhere new. The sink, the ceiling, inside my closet again. Then came the voice. Clear, calm, speaking from within me in my own voice but reversed. Bring another, or stay forever. I didn't understand at first. Then I saw the name etched into my wall. Apartment 3C, a new tenant. A young man. Alone, always with headphones on. I watched him from my peephole. Timid, shy, kind, perfect. The building wanted a new verse in its song, and I knew how to write it. I began by watching, not stalking. At least not in the way it sounds. Just observing. Apartment 30C had a perfect view from my kitchen window if I leaned out slightly and angled the mirror I'd unbolted from the bathroom. It felt wrong at first, the way putting your tongue on a battery feels wrong. Wrong but curious, wrong but compelling. The boy in 3C, his name was Evan, kept a schedule so precise it almost felt like a script. Every morning at 7:42 he'd leave for the cafe across the street, earbuds in, hood up, always sipping from the same battered thermos with a Red Fox sticker peeling at the edge. He returned by 8:30 no matter the weather. I checked. I timed it. One day I even timed the elevator rides. 3 seconds to open, 5 to descend, 3 again, 15 total. Every time. Ivan was a creature of habit, the kind that buildings like ours notice. Buildings like this one hunger for. The first time I heard the hum leak through my own walls again, I knew it was ready. Ready to feed again. You may think I wrestled with guilt. I didn't. Not because I'm heartless, but because there's no space left inside me for anything that pure. 20F took it. Carved it out like rotted fruit. What replaced it was something else. Something more obedient. The music had its own rhythm, and I was just a hand moving in time. That night I slipped a note under Evan's door. Just one line. There's a leak in the wall behind your closet. Might be mold. You should check it out. I signed it from building maintenance. It didn't matter that he'd never seen a maintenance guy here. None of us ever had. The building didn't have one. Not officially. The landlord hadn't returned any calls since 2018, and I suspected now, knew, that even his name wasn't real. But the message worked. I saw Evan read it, furrow his brow and glance at the closet. That was enough, because 20F has roots. Hidden doorways that open when someone is told to look. The building itself responds to attention. It's not just the apartment that chooses you. It's your awareness that seals the deal. That night I sat by my door and waited. The humming pulsed deeper, lower, a kind of anticipation you could taste in your teeth. At 2:47 a.m., I felt the shift, a soft distortion in the walls, like pressure from the deep end of a pool. I walked out barefoot into the hallway, the lights above me dimming in unison as I passed. When I reached his door, it opened before I knocked. Ivan stood in the doorway, pale, blinking like he'd just woken up, a blanket clutched in one hand. "There's something behind the closet," he whispered. "Did you hear it too?" I only nodded, and he let me in. His apartment looked nearly identical to mine once had before. Same layout, same smells. But the air was heavier now, touched by something else. A presence. A rhythm. His closet door stood wide open, and I could already see the shadows crawling behind the coats, twisting slightly, reaching for edges. I asked if he had a flashlight. He brought me one. We approached the closet together, shoulder to shoulder, me leading, him shaking. I stepped inside first, and sure enough, the door was there, seamless, pale, breathing faintly against the back wall like a dormant lung. This one hadn't awakened fully yet, but it was close. The carving hadn't formed. No open. No teeth, but I could feel it waking up. It was hungry. It needed an invitation. Do you feel that? I asked him, my voice soft, guiding. That vibration. He nodded. It's like a pulse. "Ah, Wes," I said. "That's the building. That's what's been calling you." He looked at me then. Really looked? "Calling!" I smiled. "It calls all of us eventually. You've heard it already. In the walls. In your static. In your sleep." His lip trembled. I thought I was going crazy. "You're not." I lied. "You're just attuned. That's rare. What is it?" And I gave him the only truth I could. A door. One that doesn't open unless you open it. He didn't say anything, just stared. I could tell the hum was working. Soft now, subtle, massaging the parts of his brain that handled doubt, reshaping it into wonder. The way it did to me. "Why me?" he finally asked. "It doesn't choose randomly. It finds the ones who are already drifting. The ones who feel the world slipping through their fingers. You're alone, Evan. You don't really believe anyone would miss you." That broke something. His eyes filled with tears. His hands dropped, and the door slowly, not with fanfare, just suddenly there. The black carving, the invisible seam. The air bent around it, the flashlight flickered, and the humming sharpened into a note so clear it rang against the fillings in my teeth. Ivan reached out before I could stop him. His fingers touched the carving, and the door peeled. He didn't scream. He just gasped like he'd been punched in the stomach by something holy. The darkness yawned open like a mouth, and before I could speak again, he stepped forward. The door closed behind him. Gone. And silence returned. Except this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was pleased. I returned to my apartment. The hallway lights returned to normal. The air lost its weight. The building exhaled. But something was different. Not wrong. Just changed. For the first time since my descent, I felt something new settle inside me. Power. Not my own. Borrowed. Shared. A reward, perhaps. My limbs felt lighter. My spine straighter. The humming in my bones had calmed, no longer demanding, but soothing. The building had noticed me. Not just as a host, but as a servant. The next morning, apartment 30C was listed as vacant on the mailroom directory. His name tag gone. No one remembered Ivan. Not the delivery guy. Not the old woman in 4B who had once flirted with him while he carried groceries. Not even the tenant list the leasing office kept taped to the stairwell. Just a blank slot where 3C should be. I asked about it once. The super blinked at me. 3C's been empty for months. I smiled and nodded, and walked away. That night, I received another note, folded neatly on my pillow. You're ready for more. It wasn't signed, but I recognized the handwriting now. Mine. I didn't question it. I began listening differently. In the grocery store, I started scanning the faces around me, not for beauty, but for emptiness. That hollowness behind the eyes, that quiet sadness that buildings like this could smell on the skin. I saw a woman at the pharmacy counter, her hands trembling over a bottle of sleeping pills. A man at the bus stop who laughed to himself in a way that wasn't laughter. A boy in a laundromat who folded his clothes like he was trying not to cry. All of them carried the scent of lonely. I understood then. Twin F wasn't about suffering. Not really, it was about silence. The deep, abandoned parts of a person's soul that no one else noticed. The pieces we drop quietly and forget we ever needed. 2FF fed on those. And I was its shepherd now. Another knock came last week. Not on my door. From within the mirror. I'd left one uncovered, curious if the reflection would still misbehave. It didn't show me, but Evan. Sitting in a chair that didn't belong to my apartment. His eyes wide, staring at something I couldn't see. Behind him, shadows danced. And over the image, scrawled in fog, were 3 words, feed or follow. The message was clear. One more soul, or take Ivan's place. And I know exactly who's next. Apartment 5E. A woman who never smiles, who tiptoes down the hallway as if afraid of waking ghosts. I've watched her avoid cracks in the tiles, whisper apologies to her keys. Once, I heard her weep softly through the vent. She's been humming lately. It's faint, but I can hear it. She's almost ready. It was always going to end this way. Not with screams, not with fire, not with the police dragging out a body wrapped in a sheet, but with a whisper, a nod, and a door closing softly behind someone who would never be seen again. That's the rhythm the building prefers. It doesn't want chaos. It wants quiet. A stillness that pretends to be normal. A hum so gentle it wraps around you before you even know you're hearing it. Apartment 50E was humming now. She didn't even realize it. I could hear her through the vents. Low, breathy, like the last note of a song stuck in her chest. She was at the edge, the threshold, and I was ready to guide her. I watched her habits for a week. Her name was Meredith, mid-30s, lived alone, worked remotely. Groceries delivered, no visitors, no laughter. The perfect echo chamber. Every night she sat in the same armchair near the window, wrapped in the same gray shawl, staring out into the same street that never changed. I don't think she was watching anything, just waiting, like a ghost still pretending to be alive. That's what makes a person easy to slip away, when no one expects anything from them anymore, when they've already started disappearing in pieces. I began small. A note slid under her door, folded perfectly, signed from building maintenance. The same lie that worked on Ivan. Just a warning about strange noises. Might be mold, I wrote. Might be pipes. You'll hear it in the closet. Please don't panic. The humming behind the walls was stronger now. The building approved. I could feel it thrum inside me like a second heartbeat. I left the note at 11:58 p.m. By 12:03, I heard her cross the floor, heard the squeak of her closet door, heard the breathless pause. Then the scrape of a coat hanger being moved, then silence. The kind that doesn't mean she stopped, but that she was now listening. The following day, I knocked on her door. Calm. Smiling. Holding a clipboard I'd found in the recycling bin, just to sell the illusion. Hi, sorry to bother, I said. These sent me up to check the leak behind your closet. You got the note, right? She stared at me a moment too long, eyes a little too wide. Wes, she said slowly, voice thin. I heard something. I nodded with false sympathy. That's how it starts. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was quiet, still carrying that scent of stale grief. I didn't comment. I walked straight to the closet and opened it. The back wall looked normal, but I could feel it breathing. It wasn't ready yet, but close. I'm gonna need a few minutes, I told her. She lingered in the hallway, watching me. I could feel her stare. I pressed my palm to the plaster. Nothing, I whispered. She's perfect. The hum inside the walls pulsed, and a faint seam began to form. That night, it grew. By the third day, the word open had begun to etch itself, faintly at first, as if unsure. I didn't rush it. The building moves at its own pace. It likes anticipation. It likes the slow dance. I began humming while I cooked, while I paced, while I stared at the flickering hallway bulb. Sometimes I caught Meredith humming back, unintentionally, mimicking the rhythm without knowing what she was saying. That's how the building sings. Through us. The next time I visited, I brought her a gift. It's silly, I said. A sound machine. For the noise at night. Helps me sleep. She took it reluctantly, smiled with the corners of her mouth, but not her eyes. She plugged it in later that evening. I knew because I watched the lights in the hallway dim for exactly 17 seconds. The length of the hidden track I'd embedded in the sound device. Just enough hum. Just enough static. Just enough invitation. At 2:47 a.m., the door behind her closet opened for the first time. I didn't have to be there to know it. I could feel it all the way from my apartment. The building sighed. It was ready. But then something changed. The next morning, Meredith wasn't humming. She wasn't weeping. She wasn't anything. I waited. I paced. I listened. Silence. Not the kind the building loves, but a hollow, disobedient quiet. A refusal. I visited again that afternoon, made up an excuse, something about following up. She didn't answer. Her door was ajar. I stepped in. The apartment was empty, but not in the way I expected. Not like Evan's. Not like mine used to be. No, this one fought back. The closet was wide open. The door behind it still pulsing, glowing faintly, the word open now fully formed. But the apartment resisted. Its windows hadn't gone black. The lights hadn't flickered. The air hadn't grown heavy. It was still hers, still resisting. That wasn't possible. No one resisted once the hum reached that point. No one walked away from the invitation, unless she had gone through, but left something behind. Something wrong. The mirror near the bathroom was cracked, not shattered. Cracked in a precise circle, as if pressed from the inside. Her fridge door hung open. On the inside was a word scrawled in something wet and brown, already drying into rust. Retourne. I backed away. Slowly, I tried to close the closet door, but it wouldn't budge. Not jammed. Not stuck. Just watching. Waiting. I left without finishing my fake inspection. I didn't knock again. That night, I dreamed of a room that bled light through its walls. Meredith was inside it, staring at a version of herself curled in a chair, asleep. She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She hummed. But not the right song. A broken one. Off-key. And the building didn't like it. When I woke, my apartment was different. The couch had shifted. The doorframe was taller. My toothbrush was wet. Something had come back. That morning, my walls were covered in symbols I didn't recognize. None of them matched what I'd ever seen inside 20F. These were new, carved deep, angry. Angry. One near the window pulsed under the paint, moving ever so slightly. I scrubbed until my hands bled. The symbols bled too, deeper and deeper. Meredith had brought something back, and the building had lost control. That afternoon, the elevator stopped working. Lights on the third floor exploded. Residents began complaining of dreams, hallucinations, headaches. The boy in honey gouged out his ears with a pen, said the walls had started screaming, said he couldn't turn off the noise. But I hadn't heard anything new. Not yet, until 2:47 a.m. That night, the sound returned, but different. Not the hum. A voice, Meredith's voice, singing. It came through every wall, every vent, every pipe, and it didn't ask. It commanded. The mirrors warped. My TV turned on and showed me my own face, but older, and behind it her, standing in my kitchen. Not moving, just watching. I turned around, no one there. But her scent lingered. Burnt ozone and lavender. The same smell I'd noticed when I first entered her apartment. She wasn't trying to escape the building. She was trying to rebuild it. Remake it in her image. Rewrite the hum. I had delivered her to the door, but she hadn't entered alone. She had taken something with her. A piece of me. And now she was back, and she wasn't hungry. She was angry. That's when I saw it. My reflection, moving again. Not smiling, not mocking. Just shaking its head. No. And behind it, the word I had once feared the most etched into the glass, pulsing like a heartbeat. CLNG. The door behind my closet was closing, forever. If it closed, I would be locked in this version of the world. This twisted mirror of what 20F had once been. I had one chance, one more knock, one more soul, to keep the door open, to keep myself alive. I rushed into the hallway, bare feet on cold tile, sprinted up the stairwell as the walls shrieked around me. Doors rattled. Lights burst. Screams echoed from places no voice should ever reach. I reached apartment 60D. I didn't know her name, didn't care. She was new. Alone. Scared. I knocked 3 times. She opened, eyes wild, and I smiled. because that's how it always ends. Not with blood, not with violence, but with a neighbor, a kind face, a helping hand, and a door that never opens the same way twice. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.